Hello and welcome to the Innovation Series. I would like to talk about a little more of an advanced topic, and that is about how do you innovate in scaled and systemic challenges. Now, design thinking and innovation methodologies that are standard will help you come up with innovations that solves the user's need. It might help you deal with the interface between the user's need and some of the issues at the level of the system. But some of the problems we are looking at, such as climate change, such as agricultural failure due to changing climates, or the proliferation of AIDS, or vast numbers of people who do not have the ability to engage with financial systems and they're trapped in poverty traps, or the fact that there are cycles where if a person is born in a certain family, there's a whole chain of events that are going to happen, and they're unlikely to face a set of situations downstream, and they're caught in a larger system. These large systemic challenges require that you meet it with an understanding of the fact that you're trying to change a system, and that takes a few. The approach needs to be different. Now, first and foremost, one of our ways of framing this is that if you're trying to make scaled impact, you're not just looking at the means, you're not just looking at a static system. You're saying that you're going to go off and create a deep transformation in the behavior of the system. So you're now looking at the system in terms of how it behaves, and what you're trying to do is to do those things that will change the behavior of the system, right? Now, scale challenges have some characteristics, and let's look at what those are. First and foremost, a lot of these issues, such as climate change, such as food security, water security, financial inequity, etc., are massive in scale. They're so big in scale that the typical innovator, even if they're innovative, wants to just give up on day one and say we can't do anything about it, right? So that in itself is a challenge. Now, a lot of these things are not static problems. They're getting worse by the day. So the more you delay, the bigger the problem is going to be, the more intractable the problem is going to be. So there's extreme urgency, and lives are on the line right now. So the earlier one can intervene, the faster it is. So often it is, it plays out in situations where there's a rapid decline in resources at the same time as that there is a rapid rate in demand, such as population growth, and the disparity between them is growing. A system, what is a system? A system is a set of relationships between actors and forces with feedback loops and triggering functions and gain rates and information flows, etc. And that's what makes it complex. So complex feedback loops and are ones where the state of a system is given by the nature of the relationships. And often these systems are not just one system. It's not like an electrical system of a car where you can look at everything, you can forget about everything else and just look at the electrical system of a car. These are systems of systems where the human systems and the infrastructural systems and the governance systems all intersect. So one needs to think in systems. There can be a deep conflict that is playing out between human forces and human desires and natural systems, such as environmental systems or water systems. And the unfortunate thing is that when there is a conflict between the human system and the natural systems, which we are seeing playing out at a very, very grand scale at the level of the globe, a lot of the people who really bear the brunt of it today are people who are the most disadvantaged, the most poor, and that's where the conflict is going on right now, right? A lot of the policies, and policies are some big things that a big lever, if you can get it to work and you have the right regulatory systems and the implementation systems, they tend to go after what is the problem today and don't tend to fix the problem that is going to happen in a longer period of time. And that's just how it happens every year. So the problems that could have been avoided today never get solved, and it's allowed to grow, right? These are hard to regulate. There's often no central authority. There are tipping points that you might not even know you're crossing, and the only indication of a tipping point is in retrospect and realizing that back in 2012 something major happened, and after that things are going very, very chaotic. And so tipping points are a part of system dynamics, and we don't know when they're going to come. Some of them you can predict, some other things might even happen. So that's another case for urgency. And no matter what problems you're looking at, you're actually being subject to extrinsic forces and global forces or forces that are outside of it that you have no control over, and that compound the problem. And those forces are not necessarily static. They could be changing as well, and it could be getting worse or more intense. And so this is just the characteristics of what scale challenges are like. Now, what if you take a step back, one thing we can say is that massive challenges are not to be solved by standard techniques, because if they could have been solved by standard techniques, they would have been solved. The fact that you have these massive challenges means that all our current degree of commitment to solving the problems and the means to solve the problems have fallen short of giving you solutions, which means that we need very different types of solutions. We need new frames and disproportionately innovative solutions, right? And because these challenges are integrated, where the human issues are intersecting with the infrastructure issues, with technological issues, with economic issues, etc., these are integrated challenges. You need to meet it in an integrated way. So if you try to solve a problem in a piecemeal way, that I'm just going to look at malaria, I'm just going to look at AIDS, chances are that you're going to deal with a tertiary problem and not a fundamental problem, and you're not going to be able to create systemic change. In order to do systemic change, you have to go deeper into the system and see how things are interrelating to each other. So there are some principles of scaling that I'd like to share. So first and foremost, there are things that have already scaled. Piggyback on top of them. So if there is a deep penetration of cell phones, for example, don't come up with a completely different technology right on top of the fact that cell phones have already penetrated, so you can do things at scale. If you can ride on top of a government policy that's already coming out or an industry play that is already being made, then you can enter it at scale rather than having to scale. And it could be a trend. You can actually find that there is a strong motivation and of, let's say, people who are even don't quite know where their food is going to come from, but they're very intent on sending their children to school. That's a very strong motivation, because if it so happens that that community is very intent on sending their kids to school, then you can piggyback on top of motivation and create schemes by which you're getting them engaged, because you're promising, giving them the currency that their kids are going to go to school, right? A feedback loop, a positive feedback loop, if you can create what's called a virtuous cycle, where what you change, like A causes B, but B causes A, you have created a feedback loop which creates a gain where it creates a self-perpetuating system and you don't have to push it. So a lot of, when you're trying to get things at scale, you're trying to figure out what is a positive feedback loop that you can create with very high gain rates, right? Now, human behavior is worth paying close attention to, because even though human behavior is complicated and one can argue that it's difficult to change behavior, we are actually finding that behavior can be changed, and there are techniques to changing them, and there's a whole science to how you intervene with behavioral systems such that you can change their behavior. But there are two implications that are important to note, which is potentially a behavior system can be much, much faster than trying to create an entire infrastructure at the level of a country or a continent or a region, right? Behavior systems can change faster. The other implication is that you can work on the demand side of the equation simultaneously as you work on the supply side of the equation by changing the dynamics of how consumption is taking place or the pattern of consumption, what have you. And so you can lower what you're trying to reach by changing the nature in which the need space is being reflected through behavior, and you can reduce the supply side. So for example, if you can change behavior around AIDS so that fewer people are falling sick, then you have reduced the amount of load on how much medication and health services you need to reach, so you can work on both sides on this at the same time. Now, norms are very powerful as a part of changing behavior. We are, as humans, we are very, very heavily driven by what we perceive as being the norms. So if you create new norms as a designer, you're actually have an ability to take vast sectors of people and take them into a new kind of behavior. And of course, a lot of the problems have a behavioral aspect to it. Now, when you come up with a solution, when you're an innovator or you're an entrepreneur, the tendency is to come up with a widget, one solution. What is much better to do if you're trying to tackle a scale solution is to come up with a platform, not one instance of a solution, but a platform that can spawn many solutions and allow other people to come up with different renditions of the solution, so that the platform is what is creating many, many different solutions that are much more context sensitive, right? Now, innovation itself is a capacity, and innovation creates agency. If you're innovative, it's a little bit like knowing martial arts and walking down a dangerous alley. You feel confident and you feel that you can handle it. So it's a capacity that allows people to solve their own problems rather than wait for the solutions to come to them, right? Now, this is something I already mentioned about behavior, which is you're trying to solve behavior, the demand, in a way such that you're solving the problem by modifying the behavior side of it, the demand side of it, and the solution side of it at the same time. So the demand side, supply side being worked at the same time, and that is not just at the behavior level, even at the level of how you create your infrastructure systems. Now, it turns out that technology and business systems have a way of outperforming the pace at which systems normally want to change. So systems have a normal time constant at which they want to change. So institutions take a long time, a specific technology can change very quickly, and so on. And so everything from a cell in our body to something which is a cosmological phenomenon has a time constant. Now, in our systems, the way we are trying to change systems, the human systems, the business systems, it turns out that if you have a good technology or a good business model, they can go faster and can be time constant disruptors. So it's worth paying attention to, right? Now, one of the things about systems and the way they work is that they have a certain flywheel effect. They want to remain where they are. There's a reason why they've come to that state. And the way to look at it as an interventionist is you want to shatter the system or break some parts of the system and quickly replace it with an alternative, because the system will break apart and then come together around a different principle. And what you want to do is both sides of the equation. How do you take a system apart and what do you replace it with? Okay. Now, what I've been saying through all this is that our traditional institutional and decision-making systems are woefully inadequate compared to the scale, urgency, and complexity of the challenges, which means that we need extremely powerful innovation techniques and also implementation techniques such that we can take on the grand challenges in a time frame that is relevant. So if there's so many people in strife and it's getting worse, we need to be able to intervene in time. So rapid transformation, if we want to work on this on rapid transformation, we absolutely need to have norm changing paradigms and also rapid scaling mechanisms. Now, paradigms is something which is not just any old solution. A paradigm is a very special case of a solution, And this slide shows a history of high jumps over 100 years. And we find that there has been a sharp discontinuity every time a style changed, right? So we had the scissors kick, the western roll, the straddle, and the Fosbury flop. And between these 2 points, the human physiology did not change. But these people were able to jump a lot higher than this. But the 2 points to note in this particular graph is that the Fosbury flop has come in and rewritten the rule books. It's a new paradigm, which means that the number of people who are practicing for the next Olympics and are practicing the scissors kick is exactly 0, right? There's nobody who's serious about the next Olympics. The high jump is not doing scissors kick. They might be doing something even different from a Fosbury flop, but they're certainly not doing a scissors kick. But the other thing is that if we were to roll our imagination back to how it must have been during the scissors kick, the Fosbury flop looks like utter madness. You're running to the pole, you're leaping with your back to the pole, your feet are the last thing that clear, and you're falling on your head. Everything about it looks wrong. So the systems of the future, if you are to shift frames, cannot necessarily be expected to make sense in terms of our current frames. Sometimes they look different, they look outlandish, and they need to be entertained in terms of their potential efficacy. So what we are trying to do is create an entire philosophy and a process where you are surrounding a problem and the system behavior with very many different agencies. So you have behavioral scientists, innovation experts, scientists, engineering, people who understand data, people who understand policy, the industry, business, etc. around. And it looks like a little bit of like a game of soccer where there are larger objectives such as scoring more goals than are scored against you, but it's a dynamic game and you're passing the ball to someone who might be in a better position to make a goal scoring move, and it doesn't really matter who scores the goal, right? So this is a different way of thinking, and you have to transcend the agency limitations and the disciplinary limitations so that you can make systemic transformation. So when you're trying to solve a large problem, you realize that between a desirable state in the future and where you are right now is a chasm. And you cannot cross a chasm in 2 leaps. So it's important in your innovation methodology that you cast into the future and imagine a future that is different from what you have, but you build a bridge to it. And you build the bridge with a methodology that helps where you are understanding the causal pathways and understanding what the levers of change are. You're understanding what the mechanisms are that are causing these issues, and you're designing the mechanisms of change. You are shaping the high-level strategy. You developing the strategy and including how you're going to implement it, and you're embarking on a roadmap that will allow you to implement it effectively without compromising the power of the innovation. And what you're trying to do ultimately is move the needle. It's not enough to be innovative. It's only innovative enough if it actually makes an impact at scale, if you're working with a scale problem, and that is dependent on how potent the intervention is, how the potency of the intervention. What is the scale of the implementation? What is the scale that has been designed for? How fast are you deploying it? And what is the degree to which it is integrated? Because scale challenges are never singular. They're always integrated challenges. So this is how you approach large-scale transformations and come into it with a desire to change everything in a scaled manner. Thank you.